Are you a business owner or entrepreneur who's had great success in the business world, and now you want to launch a speaking career to share your message with the world? If that's you, then listen up. 25-year speaking industry veteran Brett Ridgway has released his latest special report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. To pick up your copy, go to brettridgway.com/freebie. Welcome to the Spotlight on Speaking show with Brett Ridgway, where you'll learn the keys to building a profitable speaking business from speaking industry pros. Each week, we interview a great guest who will share his or her speaking journey, identify what their keys to success have been, and highlight some critical mistakes they've made along the way that you'll want to avoid. Be sure to visit our website at spotlightonspeaking.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, sit back, tune in, and get ready to meet this week's guest.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight on Speaking show with Brett Ridgway. I'm your host, and I'm excited to have as my guest today, Elisa Boogaerts. Now, Elisa is a launch planner and confidence coach. She's an inspirational speaker, a published author, and a certified life and health coach. She helps coaches plan and execute their program launches in a structured and organized way so they can focus on scaling their business. She has a combined 16 years of project management and coaching experience that she uses to get her clients ready to launch. And she uses speaking as her primary marketing tool for her business. So I definitely want to talk about that quite a bit. So Elisa, welcome to the Spotlight on Speaking show.
Thank you so much, Brad. I'm super excited to be here. I'm glad that we got to connect.
Yeah, so I'm happy to talk with you because you have a perspective on things that probably a lot of the guests that I've interviewed don't have, because they tend to be either keynote speakers or strictly platform sellers, and you're primarily, it sounds like, using speaking as a business building tool.
That's
Now,
right.
I gotta have you ever keynoted, or have you ever done straight platform sales at all?
No, I have not.
All right. So question number 1 is, when did you first realize that you should be using speaking to drive customers to your business?
Well, I think that it started, when I was getting my coaching certification, there was like a business element to it, and speaking was one of the sort of like marketing tools that they talked about. And at first I was like, because I'm an introvert, so I don't like being in the spotlight. And even in my corporate,
So here you are.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and in my corporate background, I hated that of having to do a presentation in front of people. I would get super nervous and like I would shake, and I was just like, no, speaking's not for me. I totally rejected it at first, and then and also I think I didn't feel safe in corporate, so I think that just kind of made it worse. But when I started out as a health coach, I was in a running community. So when I first did my coaching, I started as a health coach, and I was in a running community, and the 2 guys that ran the club were friends of mine, and they asked me to talk at their marathon running clinic. So they would have guest speakers come in, and they're dear friends of mine, and they were super generous and supportive to offer me that opportunity, right? And so that already made me feel a bit safe. And luckily it was during COVID, so it was virtual. So I kind of got to hide behind my computer. So no one could see, my shaking. No one could see like my pit stains and all of that. So it was good. I was still nervous, but it was doable. And then I did the talk, and it felt really good afterwards. I had this like sort of surge of energy, and some people downloaded my lead magnet, right? And I think my list was the very beginning. So my list grew by like 20 people, which I think like had doubled my list, right? And it was no longer just friends and family anymore, which was fabulous. So it gave me this reward and this validation. And it kind of made me realize that I can speak, and that when I do, I can make an impact, right? And that people respond positively. So this boosted my confidence. And it was actually my business coach who I saw, had a meeting with, I think the next week, and we were talking about it, and we were trying to figure out like what marketing strategy I wanted to use for my business. And I had already rejected speaking, but then he was like, well, it seems like you're good at speaking. Like you just have proof of this, this came up. And so, and I just kind of I love that about coaching, that they can really show you your mirror, right? Because I didn't really see it, like I knew it, but still, it was still a rejection in my mind. So, yeah, from there, I decided that speaking was my jam, and I've been actively searching virtual speaking gigs ever since.
So do you do strictly virtual speaking engagements, or do you get on the live stage also at all?
I have not got on a live stage yet, and it's been about 3 years.
Okay. All right. So what's your go-to topic when you're doing a virtual presentation?
It's called the fast track way to launch your program. So
Okay.
it's all about planning and getting more efficient with setting up systems, because systems kind of become habits within your business, and about tracking your progress so you can continually improve when you launch your programs.
All right. So a few questions come to mind, Elisa. And the first question is, how did you specifically overcome your naturally introverted nature?
I don't know if I've fully overcome it. I'm still very much an introvert. I think that um really having like a signature talk and knowing what you talk about, so it's something that you repeat everywhere you go. You can adapt it and change it a little bit, but or make it longer or shorter. But um when you kind of know what it is that you're talking about, that kind of builds the confidence. And so I feel like, because before I would have my script here, and I would like, sort of like read it, or would always have to reference it because I would get so nervous. But I felt that as I practiced more, that nervousness kind of came down, and I can talk more naturally now, but I still definitely get nervous. And so I do little things, like I have here on my desk, I have a diffuser. So I like have some essential oils. I do some breathing and grounding before I go. Um, and yeah, and I kind of had changed my mindset to think that, this is just another person that I'm speaking to. It's another human. They're not threatening me in any way. It's nothing to feel unsafe about. We're going to have this lovely conversation, and I get to talk about what I like talking about. So I think that really sort of helps, yeah, feel more confident.
All right. So in a virtual speaking world, how do you truly build rapport with the audience? Because you're not there really face to face, so to speak. So what tricks or tools are you using to get engagement and to make that a win-win for all the parties involved?
So I like to ask them questions. Usually when I start one of my talk, I like to know if there's coaches in the audience and what kind of coaches they are. So having some sort of interaction in the chat. I also like to do little exercises, or as I go through my talk, because depending how much time I have, to get that kind of engagement. And also, yeah, to share my story as well, to kind of build that rapport a little bit, and know that helps them see that I'm also just, a coach as well, and they can resonate with me. So I think those are some of the tools that I use to yeah, to get their engagement.
So what makes for a good story?
Um, Good question. I'm trying to like immediately, I'm like, what did I learn? How could I teach this? For me, it's just sort of talking about, I think it very much needs to relate to what it is that you're teaching and where you come from. And like, kind of like, because most coaches, um, they are teaching or in that specific niche because they have an experience of it, right? So they were in pain, or it took them a long time to do something, and now they have a better way of doing it. And so I think sharing that story, because I think that a lot of people, we're never alone. Many people share our similar sort of stories, and they obviously not exactly the same, but they can resonate with it. And I think that really helps to build that know, like, and trust. And so I think that that's kind of part of the story. And I really had to think about it with myself, because like you said, I was in corporate, I project manager, 16 years. And so um, to me, I was just like, oh, well, what is my story? It just kind of, I'm just a project manager. This comes easy to me, and I'm just told like, hey, these are great skills you should have. So I was like, oh, I didn't really have a story. But then I kind of, thought back about it, and I was like, oh, actually, like, I do have a story as to, it wasn't directly related to the project management, but I had a story of being a coach, and how what I do now sort of solves what I wish I had back then.
So Elisa, how do you determine if a virtual summit or a particular podcast or whatever is a good fit for you?
Well, they usually have a like a good title and a description, and they talk about the type of speakers that they're looking for. So I just see if I fit in well with that. Like for this, for example, I do use speaking as part of my marketing and my business. I do several speaking gigs every month, so I thought that this would be a good fit. Um, yeah, and I think some of they're looking specifically for like business coaches or teaching people things like that. So there's always a description and usually like a specification of exactly what they're looking for.
So do you customize your speech in any way based on the audience?
Yes. Yes, I do. So I have my general signature talk, right, which has my speaking points, which I do like tell usually people about that. And actually, a lot of the times I can reuse the same talk. I may have to, sometimes you might have 45 minutes, or you might have an hour, you might have 30 minutes. I actually did one the other week and it was 5 minutes. I was like, whoa, okay. How am I going to do that? Do I want to do all 3 points or just one of the points? So I decided to deep dive onto one of the points. And then, yeah, so depending on the audience, I will change it. Like, for example, this one, right? I don't often talk about speaking. When I do my signature talk doesn't really talk about speaking much. So definitely had to adapt it. Yeah, for sure. And I think that you want to relate it to the audience, right? So if I'm speaking to healers, for example, I might adapt it in a way so that they can understand it better.
All right, so give me your 3 top tips, Elisa, for delivering a successful signature talk.
So build rapport at top 3. Okay, let me think.
Doesn't have to be in priority order necessarily.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would say at the beginning, build rapport and make sure that you engage the audience, share your story and include story throughout your talk. And then yeah, have your 3 points and always try and share 3 things with them to actually give value, because you don't want to just, yeah, I think it's really important to give value and to really show who you are throughout it, so that people can start building that know, like, and trust and will perhaps want to work with you more.
All right, so I have several other questions I want to ask you, but before we do, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor.
Are you a business owner or entrepreneur who's had great success in the business world, and now you want to launch a speaking career to share your message with the world? If that's you, then listen up. 25-year speaking industry veteran Brett Ridgway has released his latest special report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. To pick up your copy, go to brettridgway.com/freebie.
And we are back with the Spotlight on Speaking Show. I'm my guest, Elisa Boogaerts. So, Elisa, what has worked best for you when you're using speaking as a business building tool, as a specific call to action at an actual event?
What's worked well for me for a call to
What works
action?
best for you for a specific call to action on a virtual speaking engagement?
I usually do a lead magnet. So I give a gift at the end, which usually is directly related to what I'm talking to. So the gift I have is like a planning template, and because I very much talk about planning within my talk. So I always like to offer, yeah, a gift at the end. And yeah, and this is a way of people being able to work with you further, especially if they're there and they're engaged. People will often do it like immediately right in the talk. As you share the link in the chat, they'll sign up for it right there, and then that's a great way to engage with them more and get to know them more, and them get to know you more.
All right, so let's dive a little bit more into the whole issue of delivering a signature speech. So when you went to put together your first signature talk, how did you decide how long your basic talk would be? 30 minutes, 45, 60, whatever. What did you start with as your primary shell?
I started with 30 minutes was the beginning that I did with, and yeah, and kind of pieced it out like that. So starting with like a bit of an building rapport, and then yeah, doing my story and talking about myself and kind of building that credibility, and then my 3 talking points. Yeah, so I started with 30 minutes to start. And then when I do so my own, like when I do my own speaking gig, host my own workshops, those are like 45 to 60 minutes. And that's because it includes more of like a sales pitch towards the end.
Sure. So when you find out that you have maybe a 45-minute session versus 30, do you just do a deeper dive on those three main points, or do you cover additional points? How do you tackle that?
I do a deeper dive on the points and perhaps also bring in like an activity. So because sometimes if you just sort of have, say, 25 minutes and it's in a summit, I might just more do teaching and not necessarily give them an activity to do. So if I have a little bit more time, I will give them time to go, like ask them to do something specific. So like with planning, for example, I ask them, here are sort of 8 things that you could plan or have within your program launch. Pick one and start to brainstorm the tasks that you think you might need to do for that one thing. And so I could give them some time to actually do that activity and then maybe hot seat somebody if you're allowed to do that at wherever you're speaking.
All right. So PowerPoint or no PowerPoint?
I don't do PowerPoint. Most in the summits that I do is mainly just talking. But for my own workshop, when I host my own event, it's all PowerPoint. Yeah.
Okay.
So I do both.
So what makes a PowerPoint good or bad?
Yes, you do not want to do death by PowerPoint. That is for sure. And to me, that is having a ton of text on the slides.
Okay.
So I prefer to have pictures, and then and the pictures are sort of displaying what it is that I'm talking about. And if I'm teaching, I want to have just sort of a few bullet points and I bring them up one by one. And so I bring up the point and then I talk about it, because I find that if you have so many words on the screen, people are reading it or they're listening to you or they're kind of going in between, and therefore they're not really catching anything. I know we think that we can really multitask, but like if you're reading something, you're focusing more on the reading than you are the listening. So you're not going to get everything the person's saying. And if you're focused on what they're saying, but sort of trying to read, then you're only going to catch a few of the words. So help them focus their attention by either, having something like a simple image that's described and that relates to what you're saying, or have bullet points that you take them through one by one. And you almost like, they can read it and then they're listening to you elaborate on that point.
All right, so I agree wholeheartedly with that. Now, my favorite question, always to ask my guest, Elisa, is, all right, it's time to bare your soul a little bit here and share some embarrassing speaking moment that left you a little red-faced at the time, but there was a valuable lesson learned, and it would be something that you would advise new speakers not to do.
Oh, I really have to think about that. I'm like, what have I done? I mean, I thought of one silly thing, but it wasn't like a big lesson. I'm totally blanking on what that is. But the silly thing that popped in my head first was in this summit, and we were put into like a sort of like a green room, like before, and then they brought us in. So they brought everybody into the room, and and I had lunch before the summit, and so I forgot to check if I had anything in my teeth. So just as they were bringing everybody in, I saw myself, and I was like, "Oh, do I have anything in my teeth?" And I put my tooth up to the camera, and I was like, looking at myself, and then I noticed everybody populating in, and I was like,
Yeah,
so I don't know if there's a big lesson there, but I remember that was so funny, and even the host started laughing, and we just kind of made a joke about it. But yeah, I'm trying to think of one big thing that happened with. I don't really know, to be honest, where I've had any huge sort of thing, and that was like, it's totally embarrassing.
Well, it's kind of hard to trip going up the steps to the stage if it's a virtual summit, right?
Right. Yes. Exactly.
All right. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes, Elisa, to tell people a little bit more about what it is that you do specifically. And you mentioned that you have a gift that you use on virtual summits. I assume that's something you'd be willing to share with our audience here also.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. The floor is yours.
Yeah. So I am a launch planner. So I work with coaches and I help them plan and execute and strategize on their program launches. And I do this because I really feel like planning is such an important piece. And I know that when we first start thinking about launching a program, like say you've been doing one-on-one coaching and now you want to do a group program. So the launch of that is like when it starts, because usually it starts as a specific time, or one-on-one, you can have people join whenever. So you have this group thing. And so you want to build up all this momentum for it. And you want to get people, you want to host your own event, do your own speaking. And so I help them think about through all the different tasks that you could do for launching that program. And we strategize through and we talk through everything. And and then I also work with them to hold their hand and hold them accountable to the weekly things. Because there is like, when I have my full plan is 260 lines long. That's like 260 tasks to tick off. Now that's a lot of things to do. And so when I work with someone, we break it down week by week. So it's just like, okay, let's focus on these 10 tasks this week and forget about the other 250, focus on these ones, just to make it, work about it bit by bit. And I really feel like it helps with, it's just like for a coach, if you have your signature program and you help your clients, right? It's like day by day, week by week, and it's 1% in the right direction. And so that's kind of what I do with planning. And sorry, did you have a question?
Oh yeah, I got to sneak another question in here for sure. So this is a coaching question. Do people really want accountability in your opinion?
Yes and no. I think it's like one of those sort of necessary evils, if you will, it's the thing that if you don't have the accountability, you kind of wish that you did take it, because it does really help. Like there is huge value on having someone, like that you have to hold yourself accountable to, that that they're going to check on you and that you're going to work with them on every step of the way. So I think some people really like it. I think a lot of people really see the value in it, but not everybody loves it. And I think that if you can figure out who you're working with and see how they like to be held accountable. Some people maybe need a little bit more flexibility. Some people want the tough love. So I think you can really hold someone accountable in many different ways.
All right. So where can people go find out more information about you and your programs, and where do they get this planning template or tool that you have available for them?
Yeah. So my planning template, it's called Launch Planning Blueprint, and it's really like your ultimate planning companion. So in this, I talk about the high level things you can plan for. I teach you like how to actually start planning, and I give some planning templates in it. And we also talk about goals for your launch, because depending on where you are in your business, you might focus on different things with your planning. And then I also at the end give an event tracker. So it's actually the exact event tracker that I use every time that I do my own speaking thing, my own workshops. I track, who came in, so I can actually start to calculate my conversion rates of how many people opted in versus showing up versus actually signed up. So you can really see your improvement as you go along. So that's all included in my launch planning blueprint. And I can provide the link. It's not the best to speak out.
Well, we'll make sure it appears in the show notes down below. So.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you.
All right. So any final words of wisdom for an aspiring speaker?
I would say, go out there and give it a try. I really loved how I did my first speaking gig was in a safe environment with people that I knew. So if you can find someone to do that, and just to know that in every speaking opportunity that you do, you're the expert. And so they're going to make you look amazing. They want you there, and so therefore there's no sort of fear around it. They're there to hear you and listen to what you have to say. So go out and be that person and share your wisdom.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much, Elisa, for being my guest on this episode of the Spotlight on Speaking show. I wish you the greatest of success in all that you do, and to all the listeners out there, thank you for joining us today. And as always, may this year be your greatest year yet. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
This has been the Spotlight on Speaking show with Brett Ridgway. Be sure to join us every week as we interview speaking industry pros and have them share their best tips for building a profitable speaking business. Until next week, thank you for tuning in, and remember to visit our website, at spotlightonspeaking.com so you can enjoy even more great episodes like this one. While you're here, be sure to subscribe via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Spotlight on Speaking show. Until then, our sincere best wishes to you for the greatest of success as you work to build your own profitable speaking business.